And back in Lagos now, joining me to discuss this, I have with me Wole Ogundare, the managing partner, Captain Advisory. Good to have you on the breakfast show today.
Thank you very much and good
Now,
morning.
what's your response as well, looking at the passage we've seen so far, the scaling of this bill from the first to the second reading? The body language seems to be prepared to tackle the economy, especially at a time that we're in recession, and also ensure that we have the budgetary cycle also follow through with the January to December cycle. What do you make of these moves we've seen so far from the presidency to the Senate and much more?
Yeah, on the surface, this seems to be like a great move. But if you look at the finance bill in its totality, it's all about improving taxes and improving how taxes are administered. The challenge I have with that is that taxes are a function of income. A country where we're not generating income and we're amending how we tax, something doesn't sit right. In accounting, there's something called sourcing and application of funds. The problem is the sourcing is all we're talking about. The application, even though I hear infrastructure, if I look at the trend over the last 5 years, as I mentioned on this show the last time I was here, according to CBN, CBN said we've spent about 3-4 trillion naira over the last 5 years, and about 73% of it was on consumables. Now, if a government says, look, I'm trying to amend the tax laws, I want to generate more revenues so that we can start spending on infrastructure, that challenges me a bit. You've only spent 19% of that 34 trillion on infrastructure over the last 5 years. What's going to change? So, to be quite honest, I don't see the trajectory changing because there's still too much attraction to be in government. So if somebody tells me that, look, we're trying to speed up how we spend in government towards infrastructure. So instead of spending 73% of the 34 trillion on consumables, 73% is now going to go towards infrastructure. That will ring the nice, a nice tone to me. But as it is, and with the scale,
Well, the deliberations so far have been intense. We've had a whole lot of inputs here and there, but now, in as much as there are a whole lot of recommendations to be input or to be added to the finance bill just to make it a robust and wholesome piece, we can't take everything at this point in time. How do you also think we can explore improving on our tax base at this point in time? Because we still have this conversation of the tax net not necessarily explored as much as it ought to be. Yes, there's the deficit of trust. There's the issue of not necessarily using the taxes for the right infrastructural development and economic agenda. But how do we now improve on this our tax base?
So let's look at it from a bird's eye view. 80% of Nigerians are poor. So whenever I hear improve or expand the tax base to who? We're just talking numbers. The bulk of those numbers have no meaningful income. That's the problem. The 20%...
Are you also making a reference to the informal sector as well, that we are not
Correct.
yet even...
Correct. I'm looking at Nigeria as a whole, including the informal sector. That sector, and, if you look at... Again, let's go back to statistics. If you're now the poverty capital of the world, and, there's verifiable data that 80% of Nigerians live on less than $1 per day, that's disheartening. So we're looking at the 20%. So where exactly do you want to increase that tax net
What's
to?
your expectation from our fiscal and monetary authorities at this point in time to stimulate the economy so that everybody lives at least a decent living and then has a decent wage to be able to call theirs, and then we can now pay taxes?
Yeah, so that challenges me in one scale, because each time we look at an institution, I'm going to say, look, how do we reform this institution to ensure that they can do the right thing? As a problem. We have a systemic issue. I mentioned something earlier. Governance needs to be made unattractive for Nigeria to move forward. That would be my recommendation, because whenever I see a lot of people saying, oh, reform the police, oh, reform the public sector, all of those will not work. It's a systemic thing and an attitudinal thing. The moment as Nigerians we say that, look, instead of spending so much in government, 73% of 34 trillion is a massive amount on consumables. Can we reverse that amount and allocate only 19% to consumables in Nigeria? Then the right conversations will begin to emerge. Then I can answer this question, about the monetary and fiscal policies doing the right thing. As it is, we're caught in, this thing they call between the devil and the deep blue sea.
We're not expecting new waivers. The country is in recession. The forecast is that by the second quarter of the year, we'll be out of recession. That's still an assumption. That's still the forecast, and then you never know what shocks the global economy will throw at you.
Correct.
Now, what's also your expectation as well in terms of the economic advisory team to also think ahead?
Well, the challenge with that is our reliance on that mono income oil. is a major disservice to the nation, because Nigerians are very productive and creative people. You can see what's going on in our creative sectors with Nollywood and all these other guys. So in as much as there's no way to wriggle out of it, we're susceptible to these external shocks. There's nothing we can do about it. There's only so much the economic team can say, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do that. The base itself is faulty. It's like saying you're trying to put fittings in your home, your foundation is bad. There's nothing you can do with that home as long as the foundation is bad. That foundation is what I keep referring to, and until we address those foundational issues, people talk about a lot of issues in Nigeria, but there's a root cause. If you follow the money, and I'm a money person, I follow the money. If you follow the money and you see where the money is going to, then if you say, look, if we want to create a redress, we need to redirect the direction of the money. That is how to begin to now say that the guys who now make fiscal and monetary policies around that same money can now begin to say, okay, let's channel the indicators of this money appropriately. But until then, there's no progress from where I can see it.
Okay, and now for the part of big corporates as well as the small and medium-sized enterprises as well, we have little tweaks here and there. Tax reliefs, like you heard one of the senators make mention of, especially for those who also contributed to the fight against the COVID-19 and provided funds. What do you also make of such initiatives where we have reliefs for those entities?
I mean, those are good initiatives, for the entities. Hopefully it is allocated properly, because there's some entities, as we said, we've seen all sorts of palliatives showing up in various warehouses, this one distributed, but I leave that to the government to administer. Those will be good initiatives for the government. It's the same thing with Dangote and a few others, building roads and then collecting tax reliefs on the monies they spent to build those roads. So those are good initiatives, but these are only applicable to the bigger companies. We're looking to say, how can we spread that sort of goodwill right across up until the MSMEs? But the MSMEs today are struggling, and they're struggling a lot. Because again, the base of a country,
stifling environment,
is stifling, particularly around infrastructure. I keep on saying it, the 7 core areas of infrastructure. Until we reverse the spending and start to spend appropriately across the core infrastructure in Nigeria, from security, housing, social infrastructure, water, mining, agriculture, ICT, transport, energy, those 7 core infrastructure, we will continue to struggle. Okay.
Well, we've seen quite a finance bill, and then the 2020 budget, 2019 budget, we've seen the performance. We've seen that we're looking at that of 2020 as well, and we can only forecast for the best situation on ground for the year 2021. Talk is cheap, and we just have to take action.
Absolutely.
And ensure that we have stronger implementation at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for your time on the show today.
Thank you very much.
Wole Ogundare. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
We'll take a quick break now. When we come back, we have sports news.